My name is Vrath Kalan, and I was there the day the humans packed their bags and left the Galactic Council. I was seated in the third observation ring, flanked by two Duvray diplomats who smelled faintly of sulfur and self-importance, when the announcement came through. A human, Ambassador Lena Voss, walked up to the central podium, cleared her throat, adjusted her tiny paper notes, and said, with the kind of calm that only a species completely unbothered by the universe could muster, "Effective immediately. Earth and all human-affiliated colonies are withdrawing from the Galactic Council. We wish you all the absolute best." Then she picked up her notes, tucked them under her arm and walked off the stage. That was it. No explosion, no dramatic music, no final threat. She just left. The chamber, which housed representatives from 412 civilizations, sat in a silence so complete that I could hear Councillor Dora from the Ovari delegation blinking, slowly, 3 times. As if blinking harder would make reality make more sense. I will be honest with you. My first reaction was not alarm. My first reaction was a very undignified snort that I immediately tried to disguise as a cough. Because, here is the thing that every species knew, but nobody wanted to say out loud. The Galactic Council had been treating the humans like a minor inconvenience for 60 years. They were given the smallest seats at negotiations. Their proposals were tabled, which is a very polite word that means thrown into a drawer and never opened again. Their military advisors were excluded from joint defense briefings. Their science submissions were reviewed last. And every time the humans complained, the Council smiled and said, "We appreciate your patience," which is another very polite phrase that means, "Please sit down and stop talking." So yes, when Lena Voss walked off that stage, part of me wanted to stand up and applaud, not because I wanted the humans gone, but because the look on Councillor Dora's face was worth every credit I had ever earned. It lasted about 6 minutes, that silence. Then the room erupted. They cannot simply leave. The withdrawal clause requires a 40-cycle notice period. Someone contact the human fleet coordinator immediately. I leaned over to my assistant, a young Kalori named Fen, who was furiously writing everything down. And I whispered, "How many joint operations are humans currently running?" Fen scrolled through his tablet. His skin, which normally held a pleasant golden tone, went a shade closer to gray. "Currently active," he said slowly. "Humans are coordinating border patrol on the outer reach. They are managing 17 active quarantine zones following the Messet plague response. Their ships are the primary rapid response force for the Delveri corridor." And on. He paused. "The Vectari Expanse Defense Network runs entirely on human tactical AI systems." I stared at him. He stared back at me. "So what you are telling me," I said, "is that the species we have been politely ignoring for 60 years is also the species quietly holding everything together while we argued about seating arrangements." Fen did not answer. He did not need to. The next 12 hours were, to use a human expression I had always found oddly fitting, an absolute disaster. Every department head in the council building was suddenly in a meeting. Every communication channel lit up. The Delveri systems logged 17 unresolved threat flags that the human tactical AI would normally have flagged and resolved before anyone woke up from morning briefings. I found Ambassador Solon Preth of the Vectari in the corridor, and the look on his face was one I had never seen on a Vectari before. They are a species known for their composure. Their warriors meditate before battle. Their politicians speak in measured tones during famines. Solon Preth looked like a man who had just realized the floor he was standing on was actually a very large trapdoor. "We should call them," he said quietly. "You could," I agreed, although given that we just spent 2 years rejecting their proposal to upgrade council border infrastructure, I imagine that phone call is going to be a little awkward. It turned to look at me with a very flat expression. "Vreth," he said. "Yes." "Was there a moment," he asked carefully, "when this could have gone differently?" I thought about it, truly thought about it. I thought about every tabled proposal, every closed-door briefing that excluded human officers, every time a human scientist raised a finding and got politely redirected to a subcommittee, every time the council smiled and said, "We value your contributions," and then demonstrated no evidence of that whatsoever. "Yes," I told him, "when it couldn't impossibility de bit in younger bit best. You will decade Canada bed statut devolution comedy 1. About 60 years ago," I said, "give or take." He closed his eyes. Down the corridor, Someone from Central Communications came running, slightly out of breath, holding a data slate like it had personally offended them. The humans, they announced to no one in particular, have already recalled their fleet coordinators from the outer reach stations. And they hesitated. The Myrick quarantine zones are reporting that the automated human support systems have entered a withdrawal countdown. They will go dark in 72 hours unless someone with human authorization codes reactivates them. The corridor went very quiet. I looked at Solon. Solon looked at me. And somewhere in the back of my mind I thought very clearly, this is only the beginning. 72 hours. That was what we had. 72 hours before 17 quarantine zones went dark, before the outer reach border became an open invitation to every pirate fleet that had been nervously eyeing human patrol routes for decades, and before the Vectari Expanse Defense Network, which protected approximately 9 billion lives across 6 civilizations, quietly switched itself off like a light nobody remembered to pay the bill for. I want you to understand something about the Galactic Council in those 72 hours. We are an organization that once spent 4 years debating the correct diplomatic terminology for hello when greeting a new species. We are not, historically speaking, a fast-moving body, and yet I watched 412 civilizations suddenly discover abilities they had apparently been hiding. Meetings were scheduled within minutes. Senior officials who had not attended an emergency session in decades materialized from wherever senior officials hide when they want to avoid working. The council chambers, which normally smelled of formal procedure and very expensive boredom, now smelled of panic, which, for the record, smells almost identical, just with more running. Grand Councilor Yeth Moran, who had led the council for 30 years and had the energy of a very old mountain, was suddenly everywhere. I passed him in 3 different corridors. In 1 hour. I did not know he could move that fast. I do not think he knew either. Virith, he said, grabbing my arm as I turned a corner. You speak with humans regularly. Contact them. With respect, Grand Councilor, I said, what exactly would you like me to say? He stared at me. Apologize, I suggested helpfully. Perhaps lead with that. He did not look like a man who enjoyed that suggestion. He looked like a man who had swallowed something sour and was trying to decide whether to spit it out or pretend it was fine. Arrange a communication, he said finally. Of course, I said. And the subject of the communication? A long pause. Tell them, he said slowly, as if each word cost him something personally, that the council wishes to discuss the terms of a revised partnership arrangement. I nodded. I will tell them the council is sorry and wants them back. He opened his mouth. That is what you said. I told him pleasantly, just with fewer syllables. He closed his mouth. I made the call. Now, I had expected to wait. Humans, in my experience, enjoy letting you wait when they know you need something. It is not malicious. It is more like they learned it from watching the council operate for 60 years and decided it looked useful. But Ambassador Lena Voss answered in 4 minutes. She was sitting at a desk drinking something dark and warm from a small ceramic cup, and she looked entirely too relaxed for a woman at the center of a galactic crisis. Virith, she said. Her tone was pleasant. The tone of someone who had already thought through this conversation 3 moves ahead. Ambassador Voss, I said. The council would like to open dialogue. Would they? She said. Not a question. An observation. There are certain operational concerns, I continued carefully, that have become apparent following the withdrawal announcement. She took a slow sip of her drink. Operational concerns, she repeated. The quarantine zones, I said. The Vectari network. The outer reach patrol coordination. Yes, she said. Those are things that exist. I paused. Ambassador, the countdown is at 51 hours. She nodded pleasantly. I am aware. Is there, I asked, choosing each word the way you choose footing on unstable ground, any possibility of a conversation about reactivation? Lena Voss set her cup down. She looked at me directly, with the specific kind of eye contact that humans use when they want you to understand that they are completely serious, and also that they have been waiting for this moment for quite some time. Virith, she said, do you know what the humans submitted to the council in year 44 of our membership? I knew. I pulled the file from memory, because I had reviewed council archives the night before, furiously reading decades of decisions I had never properly examined. A comprehensive border infrastructure proposal, I said quietly. Rejected, she said. Yes, year 48, the Joint Medical Response Framework, tabled. Year 52. The Tactical AI Integration Proposal for the Vectari Network. Conditionally approved and never funded, I said. She picked her cup back up. So what you are telling me, she said, is that humans spent 60 years building, maintaining and running systems that the Council never officially acknowledged, never properly resourced, and never gave us meaningful credit for. The silence between us was long enough to be uncomfortable. Yes, I said. That is what I am telling you. She looked at me for a moment. Then she said something that I have thought about every day since that conversation. Vreth. We did not leave because we were angry. We left because we finally decided our time was worth more than being useful to people who pretended not to notice. I sat with that for a moment. Then I said, what would it take to bring you back? She smiled. Not unkindly, but the smile of someone holding a very good hand of cards and in absolutely no rush to play them. Full voting rights. The co-chairmanship of the Defense Council. Every human proposal from year 44 onwards reviewed. Properly. With funding decisions made in 30 cycles or less. She paused. And a formal acknowledgement, in writing read aloud in the full chamber, that for 60 years the Council benefited from human work while treating us like a footnote. I wrote it all down. And the systems? I asked. The countdown. She tilted her head slightly. Bring me those terms in writing. Signed by the Grand Counselor, and I will have the reactivation codes transmitted within the hour. She picked up her cup again. We are not unreasonable, Verth. We never were. She ended the call. I sat alone in my office for a while after that. I thought about 60 years. I thought about all the tabled proposals and closed-door meetings and polite smiles that meant nothing. I thought about how 412 civilizations had spent decades leaning on a foundation they never once bothered to look at. And I thought about how the humans never collapsed that foundation out of spite. They simply quietly stopped holding it up. And in the 51 hours that followed, the Galactic Council learned, completely and without any room for misunderstanding, exactly how much weight that had been. The terms were signed in 39 hours. The codes came through in 40. And when Lena Voss walked back into the council chamber, she did not rush. She did not gloat. She simply took her seat, the one that was now officially in the very front row, and she looked around the room with the calm expression of someone who had never doubted for a single moment how this was going to end. I found myself smiling. The galaxy, it turned out, had not frozen when the humans walked out. It had simply finally woken up.